often we find that customers will, either be prohibited in some way or have some restriction placed on them, and whether it's SEO or a functionality that they need. And that's when they'll start looking to either modernize or move completely away from some of the proprietary based systems.
And now that's usually where we come in. Is they started with Wix because they just needed to get something on the internet.
This episode is brought to you by Mosaic Data Services. Mosaic is a leader in managed WordPress hosting, analytics, and all things website. Their goal is to keep you focused on your business and not on the distractions of a website so that you can reach your true potential. If you're in need of hosting, a website redesign, or an SSL certificate, please reach Jason by visiting mosaicdataservices.com or calling 240-399-3900. Let them know you heard about them on The Prospecting Show. Welcome back to The Prospecting Show. Today we have Jason Bach and Josh Martin on the show. Thanks for coming by, guys.
Sure, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So to start things off, let's get a lay of the land and get an understanding of what you guys do. Tell us a little bit about Mosaic and what you guys do as a company.
Sure. Well, Mosaic is primarily a cloud services provider, and to that end, we do quite a wide variety of things to help mostly small and mid-sized businesses manage their online presence. Things ranging from web hosting and web development to email management, security, and pretty much anything that plugs into the internet that a small business would typically rely on for communications or marketing themselves digitally. So Mosaic's been around for 20 years. Most of that time has been spent working directly with internet-related services, and more recently now we focus on more of the marketing stuff. We have most of our customers are in WordPress, so we have a very strong experience with WordPress and WordPress-based applications, and then we're doing a lot of analytics and hosting, as I mentioned, and some of the other things that would go into supporting small businesses, their web presence, and the outward marketing that goes on for that. So been around a while, been doing this a long time, and a good reputation in the market, primarily regionally as it relates to web hosting and web development services.
And for a small business, right? A lot of these companies that you guys service and ones that we service as well in our business have been around for a little bit. So they have a website typically when they start, and they've maybe came to this point where they've been in business 3 to 5 years, and they're looking to start spending some money, effort, and time growing their brand. So What could they do with you? What do you guys recommend to take someone from like a Squarespace or a non-managed hosting kind of environment and bring them into something that's WordPress, that's a little more reliable, that has better SEO capability? Like, how would they make that transition?
We find that a lot of folks, when they're first starting up, will find, sort of the easiest and oftentimes the least expensive way to get their shingle out there, to get their presence up on the internet. And in pretty short order, they find that they're limited in some way as a result of, limitations that are there with Wix or Squarespace. And they'll start looking for other solutions that are a little bit more flexible in what they can do and how they can do it. And often that will lead them to WordPress. So the customers we deal with, most of them have been around a while, and we're often helping them, modernize their site. Maybe they've had their site for 5 years or so, and they're looking to just freshen it up, and sometimes we're dealing with startups that are looking to put their best foot forward right on day one, and we're going to listen to their needs and figure out what it is they're trying to accomplish with their web presence. But the fact that WordPress has been around for so long, it drives near 50% of all websites on the internet are WordPress oriented. It has a huge community. And so we find that it will often, especially for small and mid-sized businesses who are not looking to do anything really exotic, will serve the purpose perfectly. It's non-proprietary. It's supported by a large community. And so there are, many resources available to people to engage it and to maintain it and carry it forward and use it for a long time. Where some of the more proprietary platforms like Wix and Squarespace, you're sort of in a box, and as long as you fit in the box, things are good. But often we find that customers will, either be prohibited in some way or have some restriction placed on them, and whether it's SEO or or a functionality that they need, and that's when they'll start looking to either modernize or move completely away from some of the proprietary based systems.
And now that's usually where we come in. Is they started with Wix because they just needed to get something on the internet. They needed to get some representation, no matter how small and ineffective. And now, their business has been around. They're ready to invest in those new tools. And that's what WordPress, sort of opens the toolbox up to, where we can have a lot more functionality and turn the website into more than just a business card. It doesn't just have to be that representation, that simple, like, okay, I have a website because I have to have a website, and
that's the end of it, right?
And that's the end of it. They want to, use the website as a tool to drive business.
Right. Yeah, whether it's e-commerce or analytics or, or membership management, or whatever the case may be.
Or even just finding the company so that they'll pick up the phone and start, the business relationship there.
Yeah.
And what are your guys' thoughts on there's kind of like this dichotomy that I've seen, at least with working with these different small businesses. There's kind of two thoughts that I've heard of, and one is a multi-page website. You got your standard like 5-page website, home, about, maybe services, contact us, and some other page. But then you also have these landing page style, like strong call to action with maybe just a video and some sales copy. Do you guys see that companies are requesting one over the other, going, in 2020 here, or is that something that's still kind of like people want 5-page websites?
Yeah. The 5 or the single page, sort of call to action is more the, either just starting a brand or for a single product.
A campaign.
Yeah. The sort of 5-page beginner's set is the entry level at this point, really. A lot of our clients end up with much bigger sites than that because as soon as they see everything that a website can do, it's like, oh, I didn't even know we could have an events calendar. I didn't know we could sell our products right through the website. Let's build this out. Let's let's do everything. This is great.
Yeah.
They didn't realize how easy it would be to set that up, relatively speaking.
Yeah. Yeah. So the 5-page website is sort of the baseline, and things sort of evolve from there. Well, there is a trend now for single scrolling pages, especially design as it relates to mobile. Obviously, more and more people now are engaging websites from their mobile device, whether it's a tablet or a phone or whatever. So it's critical that whatever presence you have works both on the desktop and on a mobile device, whatever that may be. And for that reason, there has been a trend for companies to use long scrolling homepages as a replacement for the typical 5-page site. It still has all of the same content. It's just organized in a way that someone can scroll down the page to get that, to access that content, rather than having to follow a menu or a navigation system to do the same thing. So there has been a trend for that, and it's largely based on the fact that people are engaging sites from mobile, and it's just simpler, frankly, for people to scroll a site that way. So, so there is a trend to that. But then when you expand the site, as Josh mentioned, it's often for marketing campaigns. We'll create landing pages or integrations like e-commerce or membership management or events calendars and things like that. And those are all also done with mobile in mind, but we'll often add depth to the site beyond, the typical 5-page or 5 sections on a single scrolling page for a web presence. That's right.
And when you guys are taking a site from, Squarespace or one of these other providers, or somebody maybe has hard coded their own site, or maybe even a WordPress site, one of the things I see a lot, and it's a quick turn off, is the missing SSL, right? And I think this is an interesting topic because a lot of people look at their site, they're happy with it, from a visual standpoint, but then they forget two critical things. You got to have an SSL, and you got to have some kind of, SEO effort if you want to actually rank for it. So what are your guys' thoughts on those two pieces?
So SSL, absolutely, 100% got to have it these days. Last year, 2 years ago, Google started really pushing for everyone on the web to use SSL on their websites. Just blanket, everybody has to have it. There used to be a real high bar, both financially and technologically. Even 5 years ago, there were a lot of limitations in terms of implementing SSL, and a lot of those barriers have really come down. There's some great providers like there's the nonprofit organization Let's Encrypt that provides free SSL certificates. And if you, for one reason or another, a site needs a different kind of certificate, the prices have come down, but also the limitations from the web server side have also come down. So it's much easier to implement them. It's much easier to update them. And the websites themselves, every website we build, when we build it 100% with over HTTPS. So it's, it's always going to show fully secure. But even when we go look at those older sites that weren't built that way from the beginning, the method for switching an existing site so that it's using an SSL certificate properly is much simpler than it used to be, even compared to a few years ago. So again, it's putting tools in the toolbox. WordPress makes it very easy to do it right from the beginning, but also to convert an older site that wasn't built to be fully utilizing SSL to flip it over so that it will, and then you get that little bit of boost there, and it protects the visitors to the site. So nowadays we have every week you hear about data compromises, and this is one element of it. It's not the only element by any means, but it's one element of protecting the data that your visitors are giving to your site, is to use that SSL certificate because it fully encrypts the conversation back and forth between the visitor and the web server.
Right. And it's often a catalyst for, modernization, right? A site that's not mobile friendly will often be a catalyst where someone will call and say, hey, we have a site, but it's not mobile friendly. Can you help us remedy that? Our site is, beautiful, like Josh said, but it's not running over HTTPS. Can you help us resolve that? Things like that will often be catalysts to modernization. And then having remedied those issues, you get lots of benefits then on the back end through the analytics and SEO, like you mentioned. Optimization for us is more a game of visibility than it is purely optimizing a site. We're looking to oftentimes improve the visibility of a site overall and not just focus on, on-site keywords or things like that, but looking at it in a more big picture way and using analytics to drive the decisions that are made for, how a site will be, engaged, whether it's coming through social media or directly through the search engines or wherever the traffic may come from. All of these things play into that success of a website being more visible and more, engaging for the end user.
Yeah, and it's kind of a good topic too, because people have to think about their site from three different ways, right? They got to look at the visual component of it, then they got to look at the security and technical component of it, and then they got to look at ranking. When you guys are building sites kind of start to finish, a new project, do you guys kind of work on the visual, the technical, and the SEO at the same time, or do you try and tackle two of those and work on one later? What's that look like typically?
We build all three from the beginning. I mean, you have to. you don't want to be in a situation where you're so focused on how something looks that you're willing to disregard security, security concerns, or build it up so high in one area that you can't touch the others without breaking something, without having the tower come down. So our philosophy is, no one of these is more essential than the other. They're all essential. What good is a high ranking site if you get hacked, right?
Well, that's a very good segue into the next component, which is, let's talk about that. From a hacking standpoint, a lot of people have the opportunity to build a great site. It looks good. Technically, it's decent. It has good SEO, but then there's no one managing it. There's no plugin updates. There's no WordPress updates. There's no real SSL sometimes missing, right? So what does somebody get going from a shared hosting platform to a managed hosting platform?
All of those things. I mean, the idea of managed hosting is something that we've been promoting and integrating into our hosting packages for years now. I think we were ahead of the curve on that. And really what it does is it helps small businesses and mid-sized businesses who don't have a dedicated marketing team or webmaster, for example, that can go in and consistently keep things up to date. It gives them, we provide that service effectively. We have a team of folks who monthly, on a routine, regular basis, will go in and ensure that the security is up to date, that plugins have been updated, things are being managed properly so that there is no or very little possibility for a site to be compromised in any way, whether it's, brute force, where they come, they're trying to log in through the admin area and take control of the site, or through SQL injections or other things that you see or hear about from time to time. The managed hosting prevents that, and we even go so far as to guarantee it. I mean, if we're managing someone's site and for whatever reason it's compromised, it doesn't eliminate the possibility of somebody going in and just randomly deleting something or doing something silly. And for that, we have backups integrated into all of our hosting packages too, so that there's always a fallback. But if something were to happen in the context of managed hosting, we will take ownership of that and get the site back to a normally functioning place, and then figure out what it is that was vulnerable and resolve that as well. So it gives small business owners the peace of mind that their site is being properly maintained, even though they don't have someone on staff necessarily to handle it directly.
And I would say 75%, 80%, maybe more of the sites that we deal with that are hacked, not the managed sites, but folks who come to us and say, help, my site got hacked. I've been hosted with some other provider for years and years, and my site got hacked. We'll go in and we'll see, first thing we'll see is, well, none of the software has been updated for 3 years, 5 years. It'll be so out of date. It's like, well, of course it's been hacked because you haven't updated anything in years, and every one of these programs is full of holes that any hacker can wander by and take control of your site. And that's what the managed hosting takes off the table, is that space where the software can get old and break down, or just vulnerabilities will be discovered and
exploited.
And the publisher of that particular piece of software will put out a patch, but if you don't apply the patch, you're sitting duck. You're just waiting to get attacked.
Yeah.
And that's why we're so confident that we do say 100% your site will not get hacked. And if it, in those rare cases, I can, there was one incident, I think 2.5 years ago, where there was what's called a 0-day attack, where a flaw was discovered in a commonly used plugin, and it was started to be exploited immediately, like same day that it was discovered. And so it was a race between the publisher of the plugin to get the patch out, and the hackers who were trying to exploit it. And we had, I think, one or two sites actually get exploited in that because there was no patch available. As soon as it was, we applied it to those sites, rolled them back, cleaned them up, all taken care of. That was just part of our service, because we were watching over the sites and we knew, okay, all of these sites use this particular plugin. We got to patch them all today. We got to run through every single one of these today, or they're going to get attacked.
Yeah.
And that's really a good kind of concept to have too, right? Because a lot of people look at that and say, well, managed hosting is going to cost more than a traditional standard hosting. But if you just went pure math on this and looked at the effort that would be involved to fix a shared hosting account versus your somewhat nominal increase in price for shared hosting, for managed hosting, it's almost always going to be better to go with a managed service, it sounds like, when you look at the cost of 10, 20, 30 hours of development fixes. Is that a correct assessment?
It is, and there's also the rolling effect of those costs. If your site is down for a week while it has to be rebuilt because your hosting provider doesn't have any backups and your site was trashed, how much business are you losing in that time? How much business isn't going to come back because they searched for you, they found you're down, and they moved on to the next person who does what you do, right? So it's not just the immediate cost of rebuilding; it's that
loss,
that carry on effect.
Yeah, it's almost opportunity cost, right? You have the opportunity to sell stuff, but you can't sell stuff on your e-commerce platform because, again, like you said, you're down. If you sell $1,000 a day or whatever, you're down for 5 days. You just lost $5,000 on top of the fact that you got your development fees to have to put this all back in place, and that's really big for a small business, right? If you have a small business that's, let's say, $250,000 in revenue or less, having that kind of impact financially could be huge when it's almost like an insurance policy, right? Why not? People buy life insurance, disability insurance, things like that, car insurance, but they're not always thinking about that in terms of the website to say, listen, let's insure what we've built so that the long-term cost, yes, it's a little bit more each month, but that premium raised price is going to be so much better than paying out the penalty.
That's right. Yeah, and most people understand that. I mean, that's a good analogy, and most people understand it just like that. It's penny wise and pound foolish kind of thing. So, it's been an effective hosting platform for us, and for because it makes it easier for us to manage these things, and for them because it takes away that risk, of bad things happening that are unexpected. So it's a win-win, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and if we kind of switch and talk about the flip side of it, you guys talked about hosting. We've talked about some of the customers, small business owners, entrepreneurs that would benefit from you guys. What about the designers and developers, right? There's lots of those people out there that have hundreds of choices for hosting or a managed service or SEO or whatever it is. Why is it that what would somebody get with coming to Mosaic from a designer or developer standpoint? What additional benefits are there to work with you guys?
Well, I think offer them a safety net to some degree. A lot of developers and designers are not as in tune with the infrastructure that's required to make their design and development efforts work as to the best of their ability. And we can provide that expertise to designers and developers to not only help them avoid the pitfalls that they may experience otherwise, but give them I guess a peace of mind in that we're going to be able to provide the infrastructure and the support necessary to keep the site running its best over the long haul. And there are a lot of things that factor into that. Hosting is certainly one of them. Domain name management is another big piece of that. DNS, the effective routing of traffic over the internet, how your DNS is set up, and where your email is routed versus your website, and other things that are related to traffic going back and forth. SSL is one of those things that we already talked about. So you would be surprised how many designers, small business owners own a domain name, or have their site on a particular domain, but they don't know who owns it, or may not even own it. So we can help them manage the details of those things very efficiently and effectively, and help them so that they're not having to worry about, once the site is built, is it going to, where are we going to put it? How is it going to run? Is it going to function the way I expect? Because we can address all of those things during that time, during the development and design process, and then put it into a situation where it's going to run at its best for, indefinitely.
And where do you guys see the... Sorry, go ahead, Josh.
For the designers and developers who don't have the sort of the server knowledge, like Jason was saying, we see it. We look at the whole field from the very beginning of the first idea till well after the site is launched. So if they're just focused on, okay, I've got this great design, for this new brand, I'm going to build a fantastic website, and I have no idea what to do next, having a reliable partner for that, a lot of the designers that we work with on a routine basis, that's why they keep coming back to us, is they say, I've been building these sites and then I had no idea what to do next, but you guys know what to do next. So I can just say, okay, here's a website, it's built, you guys pick it up from here. And then that also becomes added value for their clients, where they can say, hey, we're going to do this site. You got to, like you were talking about with the insurance policy, you want to make sure that this site that you've just invested $3, $4, $5, $10,000 in is going to run well. It's going to be protected for years and years. And I've got, the team at Mosaic to take care of it for you.
Yeah, and I think that that's important for people to understand, right? You have to be willing to spend the time to get things done right, especially if you're going to do a website every, let's say, 3 to 5 years. You might as well make it right now so that people can use it and not really have to worry so much about doing a full rebrand and a full, redevelopment, I guess I should say, of the site in a year because you didn't take the extra steps, right?
That's right. So
what about the future of development and hosting and websites? Where do you guys see things going over the next, 1 to 3 years?
That's a good question. Web development is such a complicated and somewhat subjective thing. We see the evolution of the Wixes and the Squarespace, the do-it-yourself type things. Those things will continue to evolve and to some degree make the process of standing up a website easier for someone that's just getting started. But there are so many things that are involved in putting a site together that I don't know that they'll ever be able to, sort of do everything. So I imagine that, we'll see continued, refinement and sophistication come from the sort of proprietary platforms like Wix and Squarespace. Certainly WordPress will continue to evolve as it has over the last 15 years. But I think largely, I don't know that it's going to change that much, really. I think what'll happen is you'll have, like with the sort of the migration to mobile. Those are the sorts of things that impact us the most. Will there be other devices that come along which need to be, accounted for in the development and the design process? I think the platform will largely remain the same. It's really, how we have to adjust to accommodate different screen resolutions, with 4K and 8K and, the evolution of high definition, what will change in that regard as it relates to design and development, things like that. Video is certainly another big component of design now. More and more sites are moving away from static content and going toward animation and graphic, video integration. So there will certainly be that element too.
Yeah, I think the being able to build a site that looks just as good and is just as engaging on a 4K screen as on a cell phone screen that's a challenge. That is not it's not an obvious thing where you just shrink it down. It does take a thought to, you really have to almost, not quite, but almost double your work, because the layout that looks good on the big screen isn't what's going to look good and be engaging and keep folks on your site and engaging with your site on a mobile platform. And more, so much traffic is being driven on by mobile visitors. I think the other thing that's going to come to a head in the next couple of years is the war between advertisers and ad blockers. That for me personally, when I'm surfing on my phone and I come up to a page where it's so choked with ads that I can't